Hello, my name is Peregrine. The new Overwatch hero has been announced and her name is Shion. She's a leader of the Hashimoto, and with her release we got a new Mizuki comic to flesh out his character, as we didn't truly know that much about him as a guy other than the fact he was a mole for the Hashimoto and that his parents were dead. This comic has brought a lot to light and has led me down a very strange train of thought, leading to one of my craziest and darkest theories, or a headcanon, I don't know, that I've ever posted. The layout of this video will be as follows. The first section is about Shion from a design and gameplay perspective, the second will be about the comic facing demons, and the third section will be the theory that you all clicked on the video for. So if you're not interested in the first two parts, feel free to skip to the third chapter. This is my first time using the chapter system, so it might be a bit off, forgive me for that. Shion is an Omnic, and our first real female-presenting Omnic in the game. Characters such as Echo and Orisa are robots rather than proper sentient Omnics, so they don't really count. We have had people like Iggy and Lady and Susie, but they're not in the game yet. They decided to take the design of Shion in an interesting direction, for better and for worse. I think her incredibly humanoid appearance is a cool concept for Omnics trying to fit into human society a lot better, however no one can really look at her and assume that she is human, so it kind of begs the question of why even bother in the first place. It's like being a black guy going to a clan rally in a mask and saying, yes, I'm definitely white. I think there is definitely something to be said about how much Team 4 are relying on sexy women for the game. It is certainly telling that this is the choice they go for their first female Omnic. Meanwhile, we have characters like I mentioned, like Ziggy and Susie waiting in the wings for much more like regular Omnic designs. However, there is one part of Shion's design that I absolutely cannot fault, and that I adore, and that is the way in which she speaks. As an Omnic, her mouth is purely a decoration. She does move her mouth, but as a show of emotion rather than to actually speak, preferring to use speakers, or she can only use speakers like other Omnics, and this is indicated by the lights in her neck to show when she is speaking. This is an incredibly unique design choice, and I really like it. It really amplifies the uncanny valley feel of a non-human trying to be passing human. This is also shown in a strange hair design. Well, yes, she has hair, but it's cloth and acts more like a cape with a weird watermark design on the back. This again is incredibly uncanny because human hair cannot do that, or at least not very well. It's like she's almost understanding what it means to be a human, but not quite. I do, however, have one potential theory, or maybe just a headcanon, as to why she is designed the way she is, that will be addressed later on in the video. Her kit is incredibly badass. We're yet to see it properly in game, but I've liked everything that we've seen so far. There's some good references to popular media, and I think really focusing on her bike was an excellent design choice that helps us stand out from the rest of the standing still and shooting gun pred scans that we already have in the game. It feels wrong to say, but we don't have any real mobility-based hit scans in the game. Like, we have Tracer and Reaper, obviously, but they're not like the shooty, the very close range. This is a movement-based mid-range character, which is new to the game. I am slightly worried about a few things that I've seen from her kit, but we'll have to see how it comes out in game because we can't say for sure right now. I do think that her level of mobility, although it is her gimmick, could be problematic if overtuned, but honestly it's not like it's something that can't be fixed. If she's too mobile, the devs can just lower her damage, and if she does too much damage, we can just lower mobility. It's a pretty safe thing to do. I think that her minor perks might be a bit of a problem. Doing more damage under 50%, I think having that as a pseudo-execution could be very problematic, in the same way that Focusing Beam on Echo is an incredibly oppressive ability, and a very underrated ability at that. The major perk that gives her all roll passives is currently being underlooked at by people. I think that depending on how well this gels with her, it could be quite a problem. If the sharpshooter passive on her that procs on headshot is giving a cooldown reduction to her, like her short dash, she might end up looking like Callista from League of Legends, where she's constantly shooting the shit out of you and you can't fight back properly because she's dodging. This, then combined with the other minor perk that reloads her pistols while dashing, plus the specialist perk that just means she spends less time reloading, means that she might not even have to use WASD to move, she might just be spamming E to move around the map. Her ult looks incredibly fun to use. It looks like it might be a movable Death Blossom, I think, but it might not be that good. It depends on how it's spaced out. Like, there's two characters that come to mind when I see that ult. There's Ahri from League of Legends, and there's Cloak of Dagger from Rivals. If it's like Ahri from League of Legends, where you get 3 charges to use in a certain amount of time to dive, it will be a good ult. But if it's like Cloak and Dagger from Rivals, where you have to use all 3 charges instantly, I'm not sure how much value you will get from that outside finishing off running targets, which is usually a bad use of an ultimate, since if they're running away, that means you've already won the space and the fight. At least in shitlow anyway. Now, let's talk about Facing Demons, the comic. There's a lot to say about it. I was wrong about my interpretations from The Fall of a Sparrow, as it turns out Genji was not captured on purpose like I thought he was, as Overwatch has had to have been called in to aid him. And of which we see that rescue, we see nothing. Because I assume that the rescue is going to be either a different comic or a story, because this one ends on a cliffhanger. The way in which Shion talks to Mizuki about his family is suggesting that instead of a curse, his family might have just been in severe debt to the Hashimoto. Another similarity between them and the Yakuza. And instead of potential hints this time, this comic heavily seems to suggest that both of Mizuki's parents committed suicide due to the debt, with Mizuki being taken in by the Hashimoto and trained as a weapon, and as in one of Overwatch's darkest scenes, used as a child hostage against Toshiro to be told, if you don't hurry up making these weapons, we're going to start cutting the fuck out of this child. This is then shown to be absolutely true when it appears that Shion has broken or slashed open Mizuki's arms, and he is sent to Toshiro to patch him up. Mizuki, even at an older age, is completely unaware of Shion's manipulation and abuse, potentially hinting at Mizuki being another neurodivergent Overwatch character, as it is mentioned multiple times in the two Mizuki-focused stories that he is far too kind for the business he is in, and never seems to truly grasp the weight of the harm he's caused as a gang member, and his grasp on reality seems to be quite thin, as he genuinely seems to believe that curses are real, and he has a few things in-game where he's a few voice lines in games where it seems like he's really struggling to hold himself together. The mission to rescue Genji is then turned into a mission to also rescue Toshiro. I don't know why it wasn't in the first place, but they've now decided that, as it's finally revealed by this comic why Talon is interested in working with a D-tier organisation with no power outside of Tokyo. It turns out Talon are after Toshiro's animal weapons, similar to those of Genji, Hanzo, Kiriko and Mizuki, and in exchange for this the Hashimoto have obtained Talon protection and heaps of money. I think this collaboration between Talon and the Hashimoto is a clear indicator of the differences between Doomfist Talon and Vendetta's Talon. Vendetta's Talon is looking to gear up as much as possible to come out on top by teaming up with a regional powerhouse like the Hashimoto. Meanwhile, the more ideological focused Doomfist did not collaborate with the Hashimoto, probably due to their global irrelevance and the fact that the Hashimoto are much more focused on owning a particular area and making money, rather than forging new conflicts and expanding their empire. Mizuki uses this opportunity of the raid on Hashimoto to face the real curse in his life, Shion, the woman who raised him to be a weapon, and also as a chance to distract her from the rescue of Genji and Toshiro, where she reveals how much she genuinely hates everything and everyone. Shion seems to be either a complete narcissist or someone with really immense mental illness, as her level of maliciousness and pessimism is not normal. Then the comic ends on a cliffhanger about the rescue of Toshiro and the rest of the raid on the Hashimoto as Mizuki accepts his past and chooses to move forward as a master of his own destiny. I think overall this is a good story. It really fleshes out these characters, and I think this comic has finally settled the debate around magic in Overwatch. I think that the writers are intending Toshiro's animal weapons to be interpreted as a type of science that isn't widely taught, similar to Vishkar's monopolization of Hardlight. However, unlike Hardlight, Anima is wildly hard to comprehend how exactly this works, as it seems like instead of doing physical damage like Hardlight does, it seems like it attacks in some different form of way. Like we see in the Dragon cinematic where Hanzo is defeated by the dragons without taking any physical damage. I'm not saying it's well done, but I am saying that I think it's intended to not be magic, even though it appears to be. I'm also happy to know why Talon is reaching out to the Hashimoto, and I'm curious to see how Overwatch can benefit from saving Toshiro, as he seems to have a lot of potential as a wise elder and quite a sleeper powerful character. Not maybe in battle, but with his potential and what he creates. However, this comic is not without its flaws. One really distracting thing about the comic is that Shion appears to be using her mouth to speak, removing my favourite aspect of her design. Now yes, this is of course because of the limitations a comic has, but it still irks me, and secondly, I think there's a massive shame to have Mizuki betray the Hashimoto this soon, as I was hoping for a plot surrounding having a mole in Overwatch as the text suggests. It seems likely that Overwatch and the yokai are going to discover the truth about Mizuki fairly soon, but this will, again, probably be wrapped up incredibly fast. Now, this is the bombshell of the video, and probably the reason you clicked on it in the first place. To keep the age rating of the game safe, the Overwatch devs team has had to downplay a lot of violence and mature themes that exist in the world of Overwatch. And I think, through the hints that are available to us, that Shion might be a gynoid, or in other words, a sex bot, given sentience through Aurora's transcendence. Despite the reputation of Overwatch and sexualized characters in general, these designs can be used to communicate deeper meanings in characters, with 3 examples being Domina, Mercy, and Moira. Domina's sexually attractive appearance is obviously, yes, to sell skins, but is also an allegory for how corporations are run. She appears perfect, beautiful, and sexy, like how you want to be and like how companies want to be perceived. Like she's got it all together, but deep inside, she's rotten to the core, deeply insecure, and pure evil. As for Mercy and Moira, their designs reflect the pretty flowery good boy ethical science, whereas Moira's more aged appearance combined with her actively necrotizing body reflects the darker underbelly of science. If you want to know more about these 2 topics, I have videos covering all 3 of these characters. With these examples now fresh in your mind, you should now be more open to me discussing the use of using sexy characters to not only sell skins, but tell a story. You see, Omnics, at the end of the day, are robots. They were all built to serve a purpose. Butlers, soldiers, farmhands, lifeguards, all Omnics had purposes when they were built, and no different to reality, robots are made to be as efficient as possible with designs fit for that role. Although yes, the Overwatch world has been clear that Omnics do have the capability to change their appearances, it is not a widespread practice and is frowned upon, hence why the freaks are the way they are. So this massively hints towards this design being Shion's original design, which is an incredibly strange choice as she has a distinctly human face, which Omnics are built not to have. And even stranger still, Shion has breasts. A one-of-a-kind oddity considering female-presenting Omnics like Iggy, Aurora, and Lady are noticeably missing breasts. Which of course begs the question, why the fuck would you give a robot tits and a perfect hourglass figure? And the answer is incredibly obvious. Although yes, a stereotype, it is not lost on me that Shion is from Japan, a nation well known for sex tourism and odd fetishes, especially in places like Kabukicho in Tokyo. And let's not pretend that sex robots don't already exist in the real world. However, unfortunately for Shion, even after becoming sentient, Omnics still have the memory of their past lives, and can then assign meanings to those memories, as demonstrated by Bob having happy memories raising Ash despite the fact that at the time he could not feel those emotions. This then unfortunately leads to the incredibly dark conclusion that Shion's anger towards humans, deep-seated fear of betrayal and general hatred of kindness, and the belief in it being a weakness, could come from spending God knows how many years locked in the closet of some dingy love hotel and used as a sex toy her entire life, being hard-coded to be unable to say no to any request, showing nothing but kindness towards those who used her for deranged and degenerate fetishes that the clients could not do with regular prostitutes or partners without police interference. So when I'm saying this, think like Clouds from Cyberpunk 2077 or Head in the Clouds from Altered Carbon. I don't know why they both have clouds on their name. So when she gained sentience from Aurora, she also gained the memory of potential decades of sexual abuse, ripped off limbs, cracked faceplates, electrocution and sickening roleplay, enough to break even the strongest soul. I think something like this, it's hard to pretend that I wouldn't also head a criminal enterprise that causes suffering to the general area I was in, just in the hopes of getting even a modicum of revenge. And this perfectly explains her design and her personality, as she is much more hostile than even Ramatra. Ramatra is undoubtedly a radical, but as demonstrated in many stories and comics, you can reason with Ramatra. He is not pure evil, he is simply a man with a goal. Meanwhile, Shion seems to be inflicting as much damage as possible, to go as low as torturing a little boy who lost both his parents for no other reason than personal gain. It also explains her mental instability and her actions towards kindness as demonstrated in her fight with Mizuki in the comic, with loaded language that seems to suggest she sees somewhat of herself in Mizuki as someone broken by tragedy, and why she is so unbelievably hostile to someone who is able to move on from their past. This is demonstrated in her final line in the comic, where she says, "Bring me Mizuki." She doesn't give a fuck about the fact that the clan elders want her. She's lost Toshiro, Overwatch are nearby. She is only interested in getting Mizuki back. And with that, my video and my insane theory have come to an end. My sincere apologies if this does seem like I'm being overly edgy. This is a crazy headcanon and theory, I know, but what is art if not to push our boundaries and to see the very human reasonings why villains become the way they are. Plus, if Cyberpunk 2077 is allowed to do it with the dolls, why aren't I? Goodbye. And, as I am legally obliged to do, I would like to thank my eggs. Cameron Wilson fan, Cherry Balls, Gold Noodle, Lord Gracchus, Persistent, Despair, Zoe, Freya, Gothic Dino, Slater Rex, and the Perhapsy.